I thought we had a strong marriage, Sarah and I. 7 years together. And I believed we had built something special after meeting at that tech conference in Seattle. We shared dreams, bought a house, and planned our future together. But there was always Adam, her childhood best friend, crossing boundaries and demanding her attention. I never expected that a simple dinner conversation would be the breaking point when Sarah looked me in the eyes and said, "Adam and I have a history. He will always be more important than you." Before I dive deeper into this painful journey, I would love to know where you are watching from today. If this story resonates with you, please hit that like and subscribe button to follow how I discovered my self-worth and rebuilt my life after betrayal. Your support means everything as I share my story. Sarah and I met at a tech conference in Seattle 7 years ago. I was 32 presenting a new software development project, and she was 30 there representing her company. We literally bumped into each other at the coffee station during a break, and her smile immediately caught my attention. We started talking about the conference presentations, but quickly discovered our shared passion for hiking and the outdoors. "Have you tried the trail at Mount Rainier?" she asked, her eyes lighting up. That simple question led to a 4-hour conversation that evening at a nearby restaurant where we barely touched our food because we were so engaged in getting to know each other. By the end of the conference 3 days later, I knew I wanted to keep seeing her despite living in different cities. For the next 2 months, we had video calls almost every night and took turns flying to see each other on weekends. It was expensive and exhausting, but those early days were filled with so much excitement and connection that the sacrifices seemed small. When a position opened up at my company, I mentioned it to Sarah, not expecting anything. 2 weeks later, she had interviewed, gotten the job, and was planning her move. Our relationship accelerated from there. We dated for 8 months before I proposed during a sunset hike on the very Mount Rainier trail she had mentioned when we first met. I had never been more certain of anything in my life than I was about Sarah being the one for me. Our wedding was small but beautiful. Just 40 guests, our closest friends and family, in a rustic lodge overlooking the mountains. Those first 5 years of marriage felt like everything I had ever dreamed of. We bought a house in the suburbs with a yard for the dogs and extra bedrooms for the children we planned to have. Our careers advanced in parallel, and we supported each other through promotions, setbacks, and everyday challenges. Then, 3 years into our marriage, Adam moved to our city. "My childhood best friend is moving here," Sarah had announced excitedly one evening. "You are going to love him. We grew up next door to each other, and were inseparable until college. He is like a brother to me." I was genuinely happy for her. I understood the importance of maintaining connections from your past, especially ones that had been formative. When Adam first came over for dinner, he seemed nice enough. He had stories about Sarah that I had never heard, and it was entertaining to learn about her childhood antics. But as the weeks went by, I started noticing things that made me uncomfortable. Adam would call Sarah at 11 p.m. on a work night, and she would talk to him for an hour. He would show up at our house unannounced on weekend mornings. 3 times in 1 month, Sarah canceled plans we had made because Adam was having some kind of emergency that required her attention. "He is going through a tough breakup," she explained after missing a dinner with my coworkers. "His landlord is threatening to evict him, and he needs help organizing his paperwork," she said another time. I tried to be understanding. I really did. I told myself that my discomfort was just insecurity on my part, that strong marriages make room for outside friendships. But then came our 6th anniversary. I had made reservations at the restaurant where we had our first date in Seattle. I had arranged for a weekend stay at a boutique hotel, and I had even coordinated with her boss to ensure she could take Friday off without any work emergencies. Everything was set for a romantic celebration. 2 hours before we were supposed to leave, Sarah got a call from Adam. His car broke down on the highway. "He needs me to pick him up," she said, already grabbing her keys. "Can he call a tow truck or an Uber?" "We have reservations in 2 hours," I reminded her. "Arnold, he is stranded. I cannot just leave him there. I will be quick, I promise." She wasn't quick. By the time she returned, our dinner reservation had passed, and we missed the check-in window for our hotel room. The next day, I overheard her talking to her sister on the phone, mentioning that she and Adam had gone to a bar after she picked him up because he needed to talk. That was when I first tried to have a conversation about boundaries. "I feel like Adam always takes priority over our plans," I said, as calmly as I could. "I understand he is important to you, but I need to feel important too." Sarah immediately became defensive. You are being controlling. Adam is my oldest friend, and he is going through a hard time. I cannot believe you are jealous of my friendship with him. Her reaction stunned me. We had always been able to talk through issues before, but now she was shutting me down and turning it back on me. I backed off, not wanting to seem like the controlling husband she was accusing me of being. Over the next 6 months, I noticed Sarah becoming increasingly secretive with her phone. She started keeping it face down and taking it with her everywhere, even to the bathroom. The amount of time she spent with Adam increased steadily. Twice a week became 3 times, then 4. When I would ask about her day, Adam's name would invariably come up. I suggested marriage counseling, thinking that a neutral third party might help us communicate better. Sarah reluctantly agreed, but after 2 sessions, she started finding excuses to miss appointments. First it was a work deadline, then a headache, then another situation with Adam. Eventually I was attending the sessions alone, which defeated the whole purpose. A disturbing pattern developed over the following months. Whenever I tried to discuss Adam and the impact his constant presence was having on our marriage, Sarah would become hostile. She would accuse me of being paranoid, of trying to isolate her from her friends, of being unreasonably jealous. She would twist my words and later deny saying things that I distinctly remembered her saying. I began to question my own memories and perceptions. Did I ever say you couldn't see Adam? No. Did I say I didn't like Adam? No. I just asked for some boundaries, I would explain, increasingly frustrated. You are always complaining about him, always watching the clock when I am with him, always making me feel guilty, she would counter, her voice rising. The gaslighting reached a point where I started keeping notes of our conversations, just to reassure myself that I wasn't losing my mind. Then came the dinner party incident. We had invited 4 other couples to our home, including my best friend Ryan and his wife. Adam wasn't invited, as this was a gathering of couples and he was single. But halfway through dinner, the doorbell rang. Sarah jumped up to answer it, and there was Adam bearing a bottle of wine and acting as if he had been expected. Throughout the evening, he and Sarah exchanged inside jokes that no one else understood. He referred repeatedly to their shared childhood experiences in a way that deliberately excluded everyone else at the table, especially me. At one point, he sat in my seat next to Sarah when I got up to get more drinks, and she didn't even notice when I returned, and had to awkwardly stand there until Ryan pointed it out. After the guests left, Ryan pulled me aside. Is it always like that with her friend? He asked, concern evident in his voice. Like what I asked, though, I knew exactly what he meant. Like you are the outsider in your own marriage, he said bluntly. Hearing someone else observe what I had been feeling for months was both validating and heartbreaking. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't being unreasonably jealous. There was something wrong with the dynamic between my wife, her friend, and me. A week later, I discovered something that turned my unease into alarm. While paying bills, I noticed several large withdrawals from our joint account that I couldn't account for. When I asked Sarah about them, she was evasive at first, but eventually admitted she had been lending money to Adam. He is between jobs right now. He needed help with rent, she explained. How much have you lent him? I asked. She shrugged. I don't know. Maybe $1,000. I had the bank statements in front of me. It was closer to $5,000, over 3 months' money that had been withdrawn without any discussion between us. Money from the account we had been using to save for starting a family. Around the same time, Sarah began missing important events with my family. She skipped my father's retirement party, claiming she had a migraine. She missed my sister's baby shower because Adam had locked himself out of his apartment and needed her spare key. Each excuse seemed reasonable in isolation, but together, they formed a pattern that was impossible to ignore. I found myself increasingly confiding in Ryan, who had become my sounding board and reality check. He confirmed that my concerns were valid and encouraged me to trust my instincts. Then came the text messages. Sarah had left her phone on the counter while showering, and it kept buzzing with incoming texts. I had never snooped on her phone before, but something compelled me to look. The messages were from Adam, and they made my stomach drop. No one will ever understand what we have. Not even Arnold. You are the only constant in my life. Our bond is special. Sarah's replies were equally concerning, I know. Sometimes I feel like you are the only one who really knows me. No matter what happens, you will always be my person. When I confronted her about these messages, she immediately accused me of invading her privacy and insisted they were innocent. You are reading into things. Adam and I have been friends since we were 5 years old. Of course, we have a special bond. That does not mean anything inappropriate is happening. But her defensive reaction and refusal to acknowledge how these exchanges might make me feel only deepened my concern. It wasn't about whether anything physical was happening between them. It was about emotional intimacy and priority. The final breaking point came on a rare evening when Sarah and I had managed to go out for dinner, just the two of us. We were actually having a nice time reminiscing about our honeymoon and making tentative plans for an anniversary trip when her phone rang. It was Adam, of course. She answered immediately and spoke to him for 15 minutes while our food got cold. When she finally hung up, I took a deep breath and tried one more time to address the issue calmly. "Sarah, I need to talk to you about boundaries with Adam," I began. Her face immediately hardened. "Not this again." "Yes, this again. Because it is important. I feel like he always takes priority over me over us. Like tonight we were having a nice dinner, and then you spent 15 minutes on the phone with him while I just sat here." "He is going through a tough time," she said dismissively. "He is always going through a tough time. At some point our marriage needs to come first." The argument escalated quickly from there. Sarah became increasingly agitated, accusing me of trying to control her and dictate who she could be friends with. I maintained that I had no problem with the friendship itself, just with how it seemed to override every aspect of our relationship. And then she snapped. "You will never understand. Adam and I have a history. He will always be more important than you. You are just my husband. He has been my rock for 20 years. The restaurant seemed to go silent around us, though in reality the ambient noise probably continued unabated. I felt as if I had been physically struck. The rawness of her statement, the casual cruelty of just my husband, the explicit hierarchy she had established, all of it washed over me in a wave of shock and hurt. Then strangely came a sense of calm. In that moment of brutal honesty, something clarified for me. This was not a problem that could be fixed with better boundaries or more communication. This was a fundamental issue with how Sarah viewed our marriage. She seemed to realize what she had said a moment after the words left her mouth. Her eyes widened, and she reached for my hand across the table. "Arnold, I did not mean it like that." But she didn't apologize. She didn't say it wasn't true. She just tried to minimize the impact of her words without actually taking them back. I paid the bill in silence, and we drove home without speaking. That night I slept in the guest room for the first time in our marriage. The week after Sarah's devastating statement was one of the most challenging periods of my life. We existed in the same house like ghosts, barely acknowledging each other's presence. I slept in the guest room every night, and Sarah made no attempt to suggest I return to our bedroom. We communicated only about practical matters. "I will be late tonight," or "We are out of milk." During this time, I did a lot of thinking and reflecting on our entire relationship. I realized that the issue with Adam wasn't new. It had just become more pronounced after he moved to our city. There had always been signs that Sarah placed him at the center of her emotional life, with me orbiting somewhere in the periphery. I made an appointment with the therapist we had briefly seen for marriage counseling, but this time I went alone. "Doctor." Landon listened as I poured out everything that had happened, and then he asked a question that stopped me in my tracks. "Arnold, if your best friend told you his wife said another man would always be more important than him, what advice would you give? Put that way." The answer seemed obvious. I would tell that friend he deserved better, that a marriage cannot survive when one partner explicitly states that someone else takes priority. So why was I hesitating to give myself the same advice? I think because I still love her, I admitted, and because ending a 7-year marriage feels like failure. Dr. Landon nodded. "It's natural to have those feelings, but sometimes loving yourself has to come first. And as for failure, staying in a relationship where you will always be second choice, that might be the real failure, don't you think?" His words stayed with me as I left his office. I spent the next few days considering my options, looking at our life together with clear eyes, perhaps for the first time. I realized that I had been making excuses for Sarah's behavior for years, gradually accepting less and less respect and consideration as normal. I consulted with a lawyer to understand what divorce would look like financially and logistically. I was not ready to make a decision yet, but I wanted to be informed. The lawyer explained the process in my state, the division of assets, the timeline I could expect. Armed with this knowledge, I felt more prepared to make a choice based on what I truly wanted for my future, not just on fear of the unknown. 10 days after the restaurant incident, I reached a moment of clarity. I was sitting alone in our backyard watching the sunset, and thinking about how many evenings like this I had spent alone while Sarah was with Adam. I realized I deserved to be with someone who would choose to watch the sunset with me, who would consider me their priority, their person. The next morning, I called the lawyer back and instructed him to prepare divorce papers. 2 days later, I had the documents in hand, and I waited for Sarah to come home from work. She was surprised to see me sitting at the kitchen table, a folder in front of me. We had barely spoken in almost 2 weeks. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steadier than I expected it to be. Sarah sat down across from me, a wary expression on her face. "I have been doing a lot of thinking," I began, "about what you said at the restaurant about Adam always being more important than me." "Arnold, I told you I did not mean it like that," she interrupted. "Maybe not, but you said it. And I think on some level you do mean it. Your actions have shown it for years, and I have come to a decision." I slid the folder across the table to her. "I want a divorce." Sarah stared at the folder without opening it. "You are not serious. This is just to scare me." "No, it is not. I am completely serious. I deserve to be with someone who sees me as their priority, not as a distant second to someone else." She finally opened the folder and glanced at the papers, her expression shifting from disbelief to anger. "You are overreacting." It was one comment made in the heat of an argument. It was not just one comment. It was a truth that slipped out. And it was not just that comment, it was years of behavior that proved it. The constant cancellations, the secretive texts, the $5,000 from our savings. 5,000. It was not that much, she protested. It was exactly $4,875. I checked all the statements. Her anger gave way to panic as she realized I was not backing down. Tears filled her eyes, and she reached for my hand. "Please, Arnold, we can fix this. I will set better boundaries with Adam. I will go back to therapy with you. Please do not throw away 7 years together." There was a time when her tears would have swayed me, when I would have done anything to stop her from crying. But something had changed in me. I saw the manipulation in her sudden willingness to make changes. Changes she had resisted for years, until faced with real consequences. "Sarah, a marriage cannot work when one person declares someone else will always be more important. That is not something you can fix with boundaries or therapy. That is a fundamental issue with how you view our relationship." "I will cut him off completely," she said desperately. "I will not see Adam anymore. I will not talk to him. That is not what I want. I never asked you to cut him off. I just asked to be your priority, and you made it clear that I never will be. It is too late now." The reality of the situation seemed to finally sink in for her. Her tears gave way to sobbing, and I felt a pang of sympathy despite everything. I had loved this woman for 7 years. Part of me still did, but I knew this was the right decision. The divorce proceedings began the following week. Sarah alternated between angry accusations and tearful pleas for reconciliation. I remained firm in my decision, though it was far from easy. Then 6 weeks into the process, Sarah dropped a bombshell during a meeting with our lawyers. "I am pregnant," she announced. My lawyer and I exchanged glances. Given the state of our relationship for the past several months, I had serious doubts about the paternity, which I expressed privately to my lawyer afterward. "We will need a paternity test," he advised. When confronted with this request, Sarah initially refused, claiming it was insulting and that there was no need for such a test. Her resistance only strengthened my suspicion. Eventually, under pressure from her own lawyer, she agreed. The results confirmed what I had feared: I was not the father of the child. The timing aligned perfectly with the period when she had been most secretive about her phone and her whereabouts. There was only one likely candidate for paternity. Sarah's carefully constructed denial came crashing down around her. She could no longer pretend that her relationship with Adam had been completely innocent. When confronted, she finally admitted to a brief physical relationship during a period when she claimed we had been going through a rough patch, a patch I had not been aware of. The revelation of the pregnancy and its paternity changed the dynamics of the divorce dramatically. Sarah turned to Adam for support, apparently expecting him to step up now that their relationship was in the open. His reaction revealed his true character. When faced with the responsibility of impending fatherhood, Adam balked. According to mutual friends, he initially questioned whether the child was really his, despite the timeline, making it virtually impossible for anyone else to be the father. When DNA evidence confirmed his paternity, He reluctantly acknowledged it but made it clear he had no interest in being an active parent. Sarah, now facing both the end of her marriage and abandonment by the man she had prioritized over everything else, found herself in a situation she had never anticipated, pregnant alone, and with her carefully constructed world falling apart. The 10 months following the divorce were a period of enormous change and personal growth for me. Selling our home, which held so many memories, both good and bad, was emotionally challenging but financially necessary. We divided our assets according to the divorce agreement, and I used my portion to start fresh. The early days were the hardest. Despite everything that had happened, there were moments when I missed Sarah terribly and questioned my decision. Grief does not follow logical patterns, and even though I knew ending the marriage was the right choice, I still mourned what we had once had and what I had thought we were building together. Therapy was crucial during this time. Dr. Landon helped me work through my feelings of betrayal, anger, and loss. He also helped me recognize the patterns in my relationship with Sarah that I needed to avoid in the future. I had been too accommodating, too willing to put my own needs aside, too hesitant to enforce boundaries. You do not need to apologize for having needs, Dr. Landon told me in one particularly powerful session. And you should never have to beg for basic respect in a relationship. My support network proved invaluable as well. Ryan and his wife included me in family dinners and weekend activities, so I wouldn't be alone too much. My sister called me almost every day to check in. Even my parents, who had been devastated by the divorce at first, came to understand and support my decision once they knew the full story. 4 months after the divorce was finalized, an unexpected opportunity arose at work. Our company was opening a new office in Denver, and they needed someone to relocate and help establish the team there. The timing seemed perfect, a chance for a completely fresh start in a new city where every street corner wouldn't hold memories of my life with Sarah. I accepted the position and moved to Colorado, throwing myself into the challenge of the new role and the process of building a life in an unfamiliar place. I joined a hiking group to meet new people, found an apartment with a view of the mountains, and gradually began to rediscover parts of myself that had been suppressed during the latter years of my marriage. About 6 months after the divorce, the messages from Sarah began. At first they were tentative, asking how I was doing and making small talk. Then they became more desperate. Adam had completely abandoned her as her pregnancy progressed, she explained. He had moved to another state and was providing the bare minimum in financial support, fighting her on every dollar. She was struggling to manage alone, both emotionally and practically. I made a horrible mistake, she wrote. I see now what I threw away. You were always the better man. When she directly asked for financial help beyond what had been stipulated in our divorce agreement, I gently refused, instead providing her with information about support services for single mothers in her area. Being cruel would have been easy given what she had done, but it would not have helped me heal. Sarah gave birth to a son in early spring. She sent me a picture with another message about how she was struggling and how much she missed me. I congratulated her on the birth but maintained my distance. By this point, I had been on a few dates with Melissa, a software engineer I had met through my hiking group. Nothing serious yet, but promising enough that I had no interest in being pulled back into Sarah's orbit. Melissa was different from anyone I had dated before. She was fiercely independent with clear boundaries and expectations. She communicated directly about what she wanted and needed, and she expected the same from me. After Sarah, this straightforwardness was refreshing but also challenging. I had to learn how to advocate for myself in a relationship, something I had never been very good at before. I like you, Melissa told me on our 4th date, but I need to know that you are really over your ex-wife. I am not interested in being a rebound or a tool for revenge. Her candor prompted an honest conversation about my divorce and my healing process. I found myself able to talk about Sarah without the intense anger or pain that had characterized the early months, a sign that I was indeed moving forward. As I built my new life, Sarah continued to reach out periodically. Her messages evolved from desperate pleas for help to resignation as she adjusted to life as a single mother. Eventually, they became more measured and respectful of my boundaries, a change I appreciated. The last time I heard from her, about 9 months after our divorce, she wrote something that suggested she had finally begun to understand what had gone wrong between us. I never valued what we had until it was gone, she wrote. I took you for granted, and put someone else first, because I thought you would always be there no matter what. I was wrong, and I am living with the consequences of that mistake every day. I hope someday you can forgive me, but I understand now that it doesn't mean you have to take me back. I hope you find someone who appreciates you the way I should have. I did forgive her not for her sake but for my own. Carrying anger and resentment was exhausting, and letting it go felt like putting down a heavy backpack I had been carrying for miles. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, or allowing her back into my life, just freeing myself from the burden of bitterness. The journey from that devastating night in the restaurant to where I am now has taught me so much about myself and about relationships. I learned that love is not enough if it doesn't come with respect and consideration. I learned that standing up for yourself is not selfish. It is necessary. I learned that walking away from something broken takes more courage than staying and pretending everything is fine. Most importantly, I learned that there is life after betrayal, rich and full of possibilities I could not have imagined during those dark days when my marriage was ending. My story did not end with divorce. In many ways, that is where it truly began. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to preserve your self-respect? Share your experience in the comments below. I read every comment and draw strength from this community. If my story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life experiences and lessons learned the hard way. Don't forget to share this video with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to choose yourself sometimes. Thank you for listening to my journey from heartbreak to healing. And remember, you deserve to be someone's priority, not just an option.